But then he went and opened his mouth, and of course we found out that he won't grant, but he will loan. So marvellous. We're going to have another panel, and then it's speed networking. And so a couple of people have come up and asked me, how is it going to work? Well, it's a very, very good question, and one that slightly taxed us in the room. And here's what we've come up with. So, innovators, people from this morning who are still here, people who've come up specially to be speedy networked with. Not now, but when I tell you, after this panel, we're going to have you spread yourselves out around the sort of edges of the room. And you'll get a little sign with your name on. Mitra has the signs, we're not lying. You'll have a sign with your name on and a little bit of a space, some chairs, possibly not some tables, but we'll try and some places that you can put your laptop maybe on another chair. It's all going to be a bit DIY, but you know, that's the spirit of these things. We're going to collaborate, we're going to work together to make this work. So innovators, when I tell you, we'll go to your spaces and then we'll have a 5-minute comfort break for everybody else. We can have a while we set up the various spaces going on. So I'll tell you more about that after the next panel, but a couple of people were anxious to know how that was going to work, so I thought I'd let you know now. Cracking on. Really, it's flying today, isn't it? It's absolutely flying. We're going to go to our second panel of the day, digital and cultural collaborations. I won't bang on about collaborating because I've talked about this already a lot today. But really, we're going to look at some real-world activities, some things that have happened already, some stuff that might give you some ideas, some people sharing their experiences. Hopefully, again, that will inform your conversations in the speed networking, where you'll have 5 minutes with each of the innovators. Listen up. Cram yourself full of some good ideas and enjoy our panel, which is chaired this time by Simon Whitehouse. Again, can we put our hands together to welcome Simon and the panel?
Thank you very much, and welcome to the Digital and Cultural Collaboration panel. As Helga just said, I'm Simon Whitehouse. I'm Si Whitehouse on Twitter. I'm a freelance digital consultant, and I'm particularly interested in putting people who don't necessarily think of digital being part of their organisation with people who do. And so that's led to me doing a variety of things, including the Art Dev Lab that we had, and to working or being aware of a number of different and very interesting projects that are going on. We've got 5 different people from 3 projects, so the observant amongst you will notice that one person's come with a box. So it's interesting to see what the 6th person on the panel might do. We'll take the same sort of format as we did with Dan's panel, which will form some presentations from the projects and then question and answer and panel discussion. So you've had enough from me for now. I'll hand over to Carl and to Sarah to talk about their project.
Okay, so my name's Carl Plant. On Twitter, I'm at Carl Plant. I'm a director of a company called BitJam, and on Twitter, we're at BitJam. Quite simple, but so BitJam, we've existed for about 6 years now, coming from Stoke-on-Trent, which is an area of sort of, as we know, of high deprivation and also quite a digital cold spot. And against that context, BitJam have created an approach towards digital technology and creative technology and data that is trying to make it more accessible and actually working with people and communities rather than just building the next shiny piece of technology. So against that backdrop, we were invited to come to DevLab and just to find if there's any projects and meet people and see if we can just draw some ideas together. And quite luckily, I met up with Sarah from Writing West Midlands, and we, after having a few discussions, we came up with a great idea for a project that we felt that we both actually really wanted to focus on. And instead of actually going straight for the laptop and opening up and trying to hack an app together, we decided to focus on what is the what's the problem that we're trying to solve, what is the main focus of the project. So instead of actually diving towards the technology, we actually both sat down and looked at the context and the people for the project that we hope to focus on. So we decided to work with Writing West Midlands and look at how can we engage existing audiences and also create new audiences by actually looking at the digital technology that people use to engage with that organisation. So what we decided to do was to look at if we can develop a digital loyalty service, like a loyalty card almost, for the audiences that engage with the organisation. So instead of diving towards the technology and getting all lost with all the technical stuff, because I can easily do that as a person that loves technology, I can lose people within 5 minutes. What we decided to do was actually we got some big flip chart paper out and we draw, well I tested my artistic abilities out and drew a stick person. I said this is a person we want to engage with. So we actually looked at the behaviours, the types of engagement that the organisation would want to have with a loyal audience member. And then from that, we started to design a service. We didn't dive towards the technology, we actually focused on the context and the person. So through that, I felt that as a technology provider, as an organisation that loves technology, we didn't lose ourselves in the relationship building between BitJam and Writing West Midlands.
Yeah, I'd say that. So Writing West Midlands, if any of you don't know, is the regional literature development agency. So we work with a really broad range of audiences in a number of ways to do with writer development and literature activity. We run things like the Birmingham Book Festival, for example. So we have a really tough job in engaging with lots of different groups of people of different ages and different demographics at different times in different ways. And we were really aware that our audiences were using different platforms to engage with us. Some of them are really comfortable with social media, for example, and some of them still rely on e-newsletters or even paper printed materials. And we knew that we wanted a system that would help us to connect with all these people in a meaningful way and maintain those and develop those relationships, but without parachuting in something that had been designed for a different sort of organisation that only worked in part for us. And we had looked at lots of systems that might do this, that would help us manage our data, and they just really weren't appropriate for us, or they weren't affordable for us. So what I was really interested in my conversations with BitJam was how we could design something that would really work with what we already had, so that could take our Facebook and our Twitter and our MailChimp and our databases and make the most of those things, rather than telling us to try 6 or 7 different platforms that we weren't already using that might not be ideal for us. So that our focus is on audience development, learning more about our audiences, tracking them, their repeat attendance, and getting a real picture of how they operate, and enticing them to come to more things and engage with us in deeper and broader ways along the way. So I came to DevLab with that problem, but without knowing that that was a place where I might find that solution. And I've said this to various people in this room before, that when I came to DevLab, I really didn't actually know what it would be, or in fact what it would do for me and for my organisation. And I was really amazed at the conversations that I had there. And I think the process of matching digital and cultural organisations is a very important one when it's done right. It's incredibly valuable. It certainly was for us. And one of the things that has worked so far in this partnership incredibly well is the fact that we no longer have a language barrier, as I felt I did have with some digital developers before that day, that there was a language they spoke that I didn't entirely understand, and vice versa. And what Carl and BitJam are very good at is talking in a language that I understand, that, you know, not to sound like a simpleton, but there are some technical things I just don't know. And similarly with audience development, there are some concerns that a digital developer might not necessarily be aware of. So finding a language that you can jointly communicate in, I think, is a really important way forward. And in this project, we found that although we have different motivations for designing the piece of software that we hope to design, we both have the same goal, and we both want to actually create the same thing. So where nothing that we've found that's out there in the market works already, we're looking for a bespoke solution. And essentially, we will provide the variables, we will provide the audiences, we will provide the audience development history and experience and knowledge that we have. and the testing ground. You know, the ability to try this out on some of our audiences at our events, test it and then retest it and rejig it, so we'll be in it for the long haul. This project at the moment has been subject to a Nesta expression of interest, and as Peter Murphy-Beck was talking about earlier, the Nesta Fund, we've got through that very initial expression of interest stage, so we will be submitting an application for that to develop this idea and hopefully build some kind of prototype next year. So that's where we're at currently. Is there anything you want to?
Yeah, it was well worth the price of a train ticket to come to Birmingham from Stoke. And also, I think what's important in our partnership working is actually we've gone through this project side by side rather than as a technology enthusiast trying to push somebody down into technology. We've actually stayed side by side through this project. I think that's really important, rather than just trying to build the next shiny piece of technology and then trying to make it fit into a project. We've actually held ourselves back and focused more on, you know, what is it that we're trying to develop? What is the solution? How do we measure that? So the technical challenges will come later, as I'm sure the organisational challenges will come, but I'm sure because we spent time on the relationship, I'm sure that we'll both be able to work through that. So good stuff.
And I'll just add that the other thing that's very much in our minds is that whatever we build doesn't work just for us, but can go on to work for other organisations. So the whole idea of having something that's bespoke and that can be tweaked around the platforms that you're most comfortable with and that your audiences are most comfortable with is that it can be used for lots and lots of other kinds of arts and cultural organisations and potentially beyond the arts and culture industry, if possible, if necessary.
Yep. Hopefully it's a revolution in cultural data as well.
Not one to underplay or understate the possibilities. That's brilliant. Thank you both. That was really interesting. And I have to say the development of the relationship between BitJam and Writing West Midlands is really important. I think it comes out from what you've just been saying, both of you in different but very similar ways. Matt's next, Matt Davenport. He's a producer, or the producer at React, which has its heritage sandbox, the Watershed, down in Bristol. So if I hand over to you. And
cool, thanks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the stories and some of the processes that we use collaboratively to make things happen. So I work for Watershed, which is an arts organisation in Bristol, and work on a project called REACT, which stands for Research and Enterprise in Arts and Creative Technology. Bit of a mouthful. It's a £4.something million project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council over 4 years, so in it for the long game. And it's to bring university researchers in the arts and humanities closer to create new and exciting, groundbreaking, brilliant ideas, and bringing them close with creative companies to collaborate. And exchange knowledge across academic research and the creative economy. So the partnership is between Bath, Bristol, Cardiff, Exeter, and led by UWE and produced by Watershed. And I think that's really the unique thing about what we're doing, the fact that we're leading with an external partner and an arts organisation. There's 4 funded hubs in the UK. We're one of 4 in the southwest region, and we're the only one that's leading with an arts organisation. And I think that the unique part of that is the fact that we're doing R&D out in the real world to try and find solutions and bridge expertise across traditional boundaries to promote this kind of emergent practice, digital cultures. So like I said, I work as a producer for the project, and I guess I'm like a matchmaker, I guess, for academics and getting them to love creative companies and bring them together. So I broker the relationships, and we work in a space called Pervasive Media Studio, which is out the back of the Watershed, where they keep all the arts people and they keep all the creative types out of view of the public and all the geeks. And we work together and collaborate. And there's been a strong ethos of that over the period of the last 5 years. It's funded through the University of Bristol, UWE, and Watershed. And we give people space to basically hot desk, work together and collaborate in a space that's outside the institution so that things can happen over the coffee breaks, people can meet one another and do things that they wouldn't really usually do in their usual environment of the academy. So the project's about culture change. So why culture change? It's at the heart of the project, really. It's about basically in 5 years' time what we want is academics will think not only about what they can publish in their work, But they might think about and where they can publish work, but they might think about creative economy partners in that process as well. So that React is a system for co-production and the circulation of applied research. So it seeks to kind of match different time frames and stakeholders. Next slide. Sorry, go back. So how do we do this? We do this through this process called Sandbox, which Watershed has established. It's born out of an ethos and belief of the benefits of interdisciplinary working. We saw how that smaller SMEs and startups found it difficult to develop new IP for themselves and do their own R&D. And also in parallel to this, that academia was looking for more applied research and knowledge exchange to build up relationships with external partners beyond the university. So what is a sandbox? Sandbox is the process, and you can see by the drawing that one of the participants has done, that's how he describes it. It's a safe space to try out an idea, so it's about trying new things, going down a cul-de-sac sometimes, turning back, not being afraid that you could do that, and making sure that we create that space where they can try things out. We commissioned 6 projects, 6 £50,000 projects collaboratively. And £10,000 of that money is explicitly to buy out the time of a person from a creative company, and the production costs and academics' time come from the remainder. It's a 3-month intensive period of iterative, rapid prototyping an idea, and the themes that we choose for the sandbox are based upon industry demand or industry peril. So I think it's clear to say the first one that we did, which was Heritage Sandbox, was a kind of low-hanging fruit. It was easy to see how academics could respond to that theme. And then we're looking, the next one, which we just shortlisted this week, actually, that's why I was a little bit late coming here, we're doing the interviews, is around books and print, so an industry which is potentially at risk with developing new technology now outstripping the book as a technology. So we have workshops in user design, audiences, business development, thanks to INETS and Anthony, who you saw earlier. And we have advisors who are linked to the studios, and theme specifically, they come on board, people from Channel 4, Microsoft Labs, BBC, and then we tack on some big PR support for the project so that we can get the stories and share those stories out into the real world. So we had stories running in Wired Magazine, Radio 4, Guardian, Times, Higher for Heritage Sandbox. So it's about that permission to play, to try things out and not be afraid how far you can push an idea in those 3 months. And it's scared the academics to death, the idea of doing something over 3 months rather than something over a year or 2 years or a longer time scale. So I'm going to fly through. Heritage Sandbox, like I said, we finished at the end of September, and you can read out about all the projects and the blogs on the mini site at react-hub.org. And they ranged from augmented reality mirrors as an alternative interpretation at National Trust properties to this steampunk box, which you can see here, which is a designed, locative, choose-your-own-adventure game, which uncovered the rich histories of Bath's Georgian pleasure garden at Sydney Gardens outside the Holborn Museum, and also the brand I Tweet Dead People, which I personally love, came out of a Twitter-triggered trail exploring one of the characters of Roman York at the Yorkshire Museum. And like I said, I could talk about these projects for hours, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about some of the valuable things that have come out, because I thought that was mainly what you guys might like to hear. So from a collaborative cohort of 6 projects between SMEs, academics, creative technologists, cultural organisations and developers, what are the benefits from these collaborations? What are the unexpected outcomes? So I've got 5 key points to rattle through. And then if I've got some time, these guys are going to run a video for 3 minutes. So what did the participants get out of the process, and what did we learn? So I think one of the things that I learned is ensure that people don't obsess over the technology and that they're able to concentrate on the idea and articulate the compelling content there. So there's a sense that we created a range of projects that created a platform for haunting in a way and tuning back into the past. So this project, the Ghost in the Garden project, where it was a way of hiding the technology. This is a magic box, but actually inside here is a speaker and a mobile phone and some clever algorithms and a GPS piece of software that uses GPS to play the game. But because it looks brilliant and it's a steampunk design like this, it kind of engaged people from the start and they were really drawn into the process. So you turn up to the museum, you're handed this box, And you're told that it was found in the bottom of the museum in the basement, and it was developed by a French designer called Joseph Merlin. And he introduces the story, and he tells you about how he's tuning into you from the year 1832, and he's in the exact location that you are right now. And you have to make decisions based upon characters that you come across by walking to different parts of the gardens. So the idea that we just hid it all in here, and actually it's just a prop, but it was something that really invested people into the story, was something that I certainly learned from that project. I've got some quotes as well, just from some of the people involved, so I'll just rattle through that because we haven't got much time. The other thing was an openness to share, iterate, test, work together, help one another succeed. There's a really strong sense of collaborative working across the cohort, so that the projects had a lot of interplay with one another and help and support one another along the way. And sometimes a little bit too much enthusiasm for one another's projects and their own, so you had to kind of crack the whip and get them working on their own projects again. One of the other things I learned is the permission to take risks, ultimately fail, but sometimes fail good, and learn from those experiences. You can work on a project, discount that idea, turn back and take a new pathway, and managing that risk and ensuring that they get to a place that they wanted to be. So one of the projects, the Ivory Bangle Lady project, they came to us with this idea of creating this huge touchscreen interface for the Yorkshire Museum. And what actually came out at the end of it was this brand I Tweet Dead People. They explored how they would get to this interface, realized that it was completely out of scope, and then turned back and then created this Twitter trail. And now the British Museum are interested in the project, and it might go on to get further investment. So it's okay to change direction. So yeah, understanding values as well. I sense that they all started to understand where each other were coming from, and at the beginning of the project we'd always get an academic presentation at Sharing Research, and then we'd get a creative company's presentation about the technology, and at the end they were kind of finishing each of the sentences, and it was a truly collaborative process. So essentially it worked, and they got the head around each other's languages and started to share languages, which was a really important thing for us. So I think I've got about a minute left, so if we can show a little bit of a minute of that video, that would be great. This just shows some of the ways in which people experienced the project and some of the comments that came out.
Being part of React at this time really feels exciting, and the excitement is coming from the openness of being in a group of people with diverse range of interests and agendas from all the different projects, but working together and coming together in the workshops that we do and sharing those ideas to push our idea forward beyond what we could have done ourselves.
It's like being in the middle of something special. You can feel lots of ideas kind of bubbling together in a kind of mixing jar of wonderful things that are fermenting and taking shape.
But this is a chance to do collaborative work outside of my normal networks of academics, to work with creative industry individuals, and that's exciting as well as challenging.
It's bringing together a whole load of creative partners to play with some ideas, bounce ideas around and create new wonderful things from it.
I think it's unique because it forces you to think about things in different ways.
Being in React is a creative, fantastic process, and really what it's been for me is just an opportunity to work with people I wouldn't work with otherwise.
It's scary but fun.
I think React will change the way we do business in the future, mainly because it's totally convinced me of the importance of working with a range of partners, of actually embedding yourself in a community, a business community, which shares information and is part of that culture of sharing information technology.
It's cool to finish that now. I just wanted to give a sense of what it's like to be as part of this cohort. And there's one last point that I missed actually, which was be promiscuous. And by that I don't mean what you think I mean. I mean by getting out there and being opportunistic and about spotting potential and moving quickly to curate situations. So I had a beer in a bar basically with someone that was involved in South by Southwest and the organisation of that through my executive producer Claire. And basically, we now have one of the projects you just saw, Future Cemetery Project. They deploy technologies into Arnos Vale Cemetery. They're going to be on a panel for the WTF, what the strand of the program. They've encouraged us to apply, and we got it. So we're going out to Austin, Texas in March to present one of the projects. And I think it's about that kind of just opening your mind and being broad to making sure that you could make those situations happen, even when you're not working and you're having a beer. So that's me, I think.
Thanks, Matt. And I would encourage people to go to the Heritage Sandbox site, because you've created some really good video, and there's lots of content on there that reflects a lot of the things that you've seen very shortly there. I think there's a nice segue there, because you said about touch table screens being out of scope, and we're fortunate enough to have the people here, Joseph Sivell and Justin Hughes from the University of Birmingham and the Hive Worcester, who have had the scope to do work on a project like that.
Okay, thank you. I should tell you my Twitter before I start. We are UOBDHD, if you're following that. So I'm from the University of Birmingham, and particularly the Digital Heritage Demonstrator within that. So what is the Digital Heritage Demonstrator? Well, it's a project that has been set up with EU funding specifically to look at collaboration between the three sectors. There's this idea in the EU of the triple helix. And the collaboration is specifically between academia, between the heritage sector, and the private sector. Now, in the case of our project, academia is obviously the University of Birmingham. The heritage sector, for our project, we have the Hive, and Justin Hughes is here from the Hive today with me. But we have three other very important partners, Birmingham Museums Trust, the Ironbridge Gorge Trust, and the Library of Birmingham. And who's in the private sector? Well, we're here, and our funding is entirely predicated upon our help for SMEs in the West Midlands. And they can be in any sector. They can be in design, digital, tech services, you name it. So we are actively looking for SMEs within this area to help us with the collaboration. And between these three groups, these three parties, what is it we do? What is the collaboration that we actually take part in? Well, we're interested in all things to do with digital and heritage. We are absolutely into multi-user digital. We're absolutely into multi-touch digital experiences, mobile devices, intelligent spaces, and some of my research colleagues are cabling and sensoring up whole buildings with interesting gadgets to tell where people are standing and how tall they are and what their body temperature is at any given time. We're also, a key part of our project, as Simon mentioned, is touch tables. And there is an example of one of them with one of our pieces on, and some gestures below. We're interested in gallery, outdoor, online, you name it. The main thing we're looking for is interesting pieces of a bigger jigsaw, interesting pieces that fit together to paint a larger picture of the heritage of this region, and we're looking for projects that we can do in partnership with different sectors. So that's the Digital Heritage Demonstrator. Justin's going to tell you about the Hive.
Yeah, I work at the Hive in Worcester, and the building opened in July this year. It's a integrated county council public library and university library, and the partnership is between Worcestershire County Council and the University of Worcester. Within that building there are several services, including libraries, history, the Worcestershire Hub, and I work for Heritage Arts and Music in a particular wing, which is a recently merged service, which is Worcestershire Archives and Archaeology. And for the last couple of years, I had been developing touchscreen devices for various museums and heritage centres in Worcestershire. And one of the things that I would just repeat from what Matt was saying a moment ago is that sometimes these collaborations are about seeing opportunities. And a couple of years ago, two of my colleagues were present at a conference at the University of Birmingham where the demonstrator project was in embryo, and we approached them to ask about the possibility of partnership on their programme, and we've worked with them for the last 18 months or so to develop, from our point of view, an exciting touch table device in the Hive, which has enabled us to just bring the public's attention to, in a very exciting way, the sorts of resources that we hold in our record office and in our historic environment record database. And so I think really what the opportunity we saw and have successfully managed is to give a really dynamic opening to show the public who are coming into the Hive in big numbers what our service and what our resources have for them as individuals and as organisations.
Skip through this. So that's the Hive. So what did we build? Well, we've been, as a team, building actual product for a few months, and this was the first touch table project that we launched. The aims of it were to try and showcase the very varied collections that the Hive has, and I think it's fair to say that hadn't had a public audience for before. It had been pretty much a back office collection in some regards. It didn't have a visiting public because it didn't have a venue to display in, and suddenly there was the opportunity with the new building to have a new venue. So there were interesting questions to be asked about what parts of the collection, this very varied collection, would be shown. This is just a few screenshots from the piece that we built, and there's the front menu, and one of the 6 albums that were built was agricultural photographs. It was key that the industry of the area was represented, and crucially also that people were shown. It's very easy with archive material, those of you who work in archives, to have material that doesn't actually show people. So when we found parts of the collection that did, we were very keen to use those. So you can go into that album, and there's a selection of photographs from the 19th and 20th century on the table, and you can enlarge and explore the collection in a similar way to this. Another album was dealing with the archaeological landscapes and the way that Justin's department had been able to evidence reconstructions of past settlements by the material they'd found in the digs that they'd been doing. And there was a collection of paintings that were created by a digital artist to illustrate the previous history of Worcestershire using some of those artefacts. And again, you can explore those on the table and sort of compare and contrast the images. And I'll just show you one other album. When people say to me, what are the touch tables good at, it's very difficult to move beyond the fact that they're kind of made for maps. If you've got wonderful maps like the Hive has, the ability to take an object that is usually off display, is usually kept in the dark, and when you want to see it, you need to get gloves and a big table to look at it, and to be able to examine it in extreme detail because of the extraordinary quality of their digitization. It really is absolutely made for that. So that's a brief snapshot of it. Here's the actual table itself. And Justin, do you want to talk about the results of the use that you've had so far?
Certainly, yes. Well, we've had a lot of interest from, as you'd expect, from people who use library and history centres on a casual basis. But we've begun to monitor a little bit more what potential the table has for organised groups and for visiting parties. So, for example, during September, I was able to run brief sessions with 10 different school groups, comprising about 30 in each of those groups. So, in excess of 300 school children have been working together to see what possibilities the table has, and to really just excite them about what we've got on the Explore the Past level at the Hive. We've also, we basically include, we have about a 1.5 hour tour for visiting societies and groups on quite a regular basis, and so we test and use that touch table with them to see what sort of reaction it gets from them. A couple of other features that Joseph didn't include in along with the albums, the demonstrator albums, there are three other key areas which actually tell the public much more about what heritage resources and amenities there are in other parts of the county. And also key for the Hive itself, the sheer range of documents, maps, photographs, and what we've got on the historic environment record. So it's almost like a one-stop table in the sense that people coming in with all sorts of different research interests can begin that process by seeing what sort of range of material we've got in the building for them. So later this year, into next year, we will be hoping to find ways to put some more hard statistics on how it's been used and how potentially it could be used in a more formal educational way,
I have 3 key learnings to share, which are very brief. I know we're running out of time. The first is to reiterate the point that my colleagues mentioned. It's about finding a common language. It's very easy to miss the fact that when you're coming from different cultures, you use words that we share to mean different things. So establishing a common vocabulary is really important. That's very easy to acknowledge, but actually quite hard to do. And we specifically set out in parts of conversations, this word means this. When we say this, it refers to that, not that. And that helped a lot, I think. Secondly, that getting to the underlying needs of each partner is really important. It's very easy to look at the brief and see the immediate written needs of the project, but actually trying to understand what are the needs of the organisation behind that was actually key to what we do. And then thirdly, and it's related to both of those, every organisation has its own currency. In a commercial organisation, that currency is money. That's what you're driven by. That's what you need to make. In a heritage organisation, of course they need money. Of course they have budgets and so on, but it's not their currency. They have often a budget every year, and they have to keep within that budget. But often, if you really dig down, their currency might be something totally different, like reputation. And that colours the judgments of everything they do. And commercial organisations often struggle to understand that because they're just not used to thinking that way. They don't have to.
That's brilliant, thank you. I really like the fact that to listen to Justin and to Joseph, that Justin articulates really well about what the technology does, and Joseph is talking really enthusiastically about the content that they've got in the Hive. I really like that about the way they talk about each other. We've got about 15-20 minutes left, about 15 minutes for questions from the audience. So as we're fairly short on time, I'll open it up to anybody who wants to ask first before I chip in with mine. I'll ask my question first then. Do you think you had to be brave to enter into this? Do you think how much risk do you think you were taking professionally on? I'm
going to speak for the Hive, because they perhaps won't. It does take a certain amount of organisational courage to do this, and Justin and Victoria Bryant at the Hive were courageous in convincing their organisation to do this. What people often forget outside is that organisations are large. Some of these organisations like the Hive, they're actually teams of organisations, and they're broad churches. They have a multitude of different opinions on topics. So there's a lot of different stakeholders who have to be convinced. If you stick your neck out and say, I really think we should do this, many organisations find it difficult to take risks and to, as you said, to fail well. There's actually quite a climate in, and I'm not specifically talking about the Hive, but in public sector in general, that failing is a bad thing, and that causes them a lot of problems with taking risks. So they do have to be courageous.
Thank you. Matt, did you want to pick up on that?
I think the culture's changing. I think it's been, like you say, in the public sector, if you're funded, then you kind of, there's a lot of projects that I see all the time that hide the failure. But actually, those learnings, if you share those learnings, and if you get, if you actually are explicit about sharing your stories, I think that we're getting to a better place then.
I hope so.
Thank you. How about you two?
I don't know necessarily about being brave, but I think you do have to be aware of the risk and manage the risk. I mean, especially for a very small organisation like ours, and a lot of the arts organisations that might work with people like BitJam on similar projects, in that we're only 4 people and only one of us is full-time, so generating the capacity to work on a project like this, never mind completing it, is actually a challenge in itself. So from that perspective, I think you have to be very organised and plan very well, and understand what might happen to your organisation if things don't go the way you want them to, and how you would deal with that. So I think you have to be committed in that way, certainly.
I think it's important that the nature of funding has changed, that you can apply for some R&D funding not knowing what the outcome is going to be. So in some ways, rather than actually putting out in the application that you are going to build this and it will look like this and it will act like this, and then you try to build it and there's a whole risk of just trying to focus on that, rather than saying, we don't really know what the outcome of this is going to be. We have an idea it's going to be somewhere in the region of A or B. However, the reason why we need the R&D funding in place is because we want to go on a journey and explore that. So it's great that we've got the funding from the Nesta there to bring arts organisations, technology providers and research partners together to go on this journey. So I think, yes, it is brave, but I think you need to have confidence that you're able to go on that journey and create something and explore and make mistakes, but recover from them and still get some value out of the experience.
Yes, that's a nice echo back to the previous panel about the various funds that are available and which ones to go for, isn't it? Thank you. Has anybody got anything they want to ask? Clayton.
Hi, Clayton from SAMPAD. A question to the University of Birmingham for the Digital Heritage Demonstrator. We're going to be involved with a project soon, but I'm just quite interested to find out if and how you're going to document some of the mistakes that might be made along the way with some of the brokerage that you're going to be doing between technology organisations and the cultural organisations.
Good question. I talked a little bit about what each partner gets out of the collaborations. One of the things that we as a university are seeking to get out of it is research opportunities. So we have a climate, therefore, of learning from mistakes as much as learning from successes, and crucially in publishing them. I think the challenge for us is to find ways of publishing that are not purely in a technical sense. So there are, and by technical I don't just mean technology, but in terms of specialization, finding places to publish that sort of information is something that we actively are looking for. Where we have a lot of colleagues who can help us publish in specific journals or specific areas, and they are individually, those areas are individually becoming more open to wider issues than just their subject knowledge. So, for instance, you can publish in an archaeology journal about a digital project now, and you perhaps might not think you could do that. And those different sections are interested in that. But where do you publish about collaboration specifically? There are places, but as a university, I think we're used to publishing in academic places, and we need to be publishing more widely.
Can I touch on that? We make sure as part, it's very much the ethos and it's part of the kind of DNA of what we do, but we make sure that they blog, and I crack the whip so that they blog at least fortnightly about the process, so that that's exposed and it's out there. I mean, it might not be easily searchable in the future, but it's there, and kind of we tweet about it and we make sure that, you know, it's always available. I think that's one way of...
Yes, that's something we definitely are looking to do. And one of the things that we do informally is that every month we have a thing called Cake Day, which is actually collaboration and knowledge exchange. And it's an open event for SMEs and heritage organisations to come along. You have to book a ticket, but it's free, and to share this learning. So we share it very well on an informal basis. but you kind of have to come along to get the learning.
Do you want to tell people when the next one is?
I think it's next Tuesday.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. Can I just make a comment?
The
next event is next Tuesday on the 27th, and actually one of our early events was a prime example where a collaborative project with two companies, and the company came along and basically explained the story, their journey, and basically the things not to do. So the lessons learned are there, but it's in that informal room, usually with about 10, 15 people. So if you come along to those, and then, eventually the project we'll do with you, hopefully, will become a good story and a success, and you'll be able to stand up and talk and say what went right and maybe what went wrong too, and other people will learn from that. So there's an informal platform, which I think is really important, because it's often a cautious thing that people want to publish their failures, but actually we should all be perfectly open about what works and what doesn't work. So they're every month, and you can just look on Eventbrite for us. Thanks.
And if you go to our website, you can register for that and our e-newsletter, and so that's another place where we disseminate. But I think in terms of more nationally disseminating it, we're looking for opportunities to do that.
Thank you. Lara?
Hi, Lara Ratnaraja. I'm just going to come back again, actually, about the nature of collaboration, because I was obviously involved with the development lab with Carl and Sarah, and I'm actually looking at the data visualization that Carl's doing for us at the moment, and apparently collaboration is more important than relationships, which presumably you can't have. It's a bit of a chicken and egg question, which is why we put that in. I mean, you can have collaborations, but it doesn't mean they're going to be any good. So I wanted to come back to the nature of relationships. How important are the people in the relationships, and do you have to have shared values? Because one of the things that came out was how well you two got on, for example. Presumably it's the same with UMass and with the Watershed and with the university. But bringing it back to people, how do you kind of, I suppose, broker the relationship between people, not necessarily just the tech and the organisation?
I can go.
I guess because I'm cheating here, really, because my background, even though I'm into digital technology, I'm actually a trained mental health nurse in the therapy. So my background is working with people anyway. So I'm sort of bringing in from two angles there, but I think it is important to actually focus on understanding shared values and understanding that trying to build that relationship so you can walk side by side. I think that's something I keep reiterating. You've got to feel that you both are actually not being pulled by each other uncomfortably into the wrong direction. I think that's something that you can pick up quite early in the relationship building. I guess at times there's going to be the need of having confidence in each other to lead on certain aspects. So through this process, I've got every confidence with Sarah to actually understand what will work around engaging audiences and vice versa, what will work with using different types of technologies. But I think it's understanding early on about can you trust each other? Do you feel naturally comfortable in that relationship? If you feel slightly uncomfortable, I guess there's some more work needed before you start getting deeper and deeper into a project, because if that is not cleared up early on in the relationship, the collaboration itself will come under some tension later on when the challenges grow. So I think it is important to really focus on the relationship first for the collaboration to be strong enough to rise up to any challenges.
Can I just add to that and say that we do get along very well, but also our organisations get along very well in that we're matched very well in terms of what we are trying to do. So that's another very important point. But also we, as Carl sort of alluded to, we spent quite a lot of time on what I would call the pre-relationship, which was the conversations we had before we decided actually to do anything. The talking around, what does your organisation do and what are you really, really interested in and what are you really trying to get at, before actually saying, yes, let's go and do an application, or yes, let's actually put this down on paper. So that's why things like DevLab and Hack Days and opportunities like this to actually be face-to-face and talk to people are fundamental to have those relationships forming in the first place.
I completely agree. I think that as part of our process, we start off with these things we call ideas labs, where we just invite people along to a kind of unconference, kind of open space event. It's a bit of a bastardization of the two. And they come along and we let them kind of manage their own kind of relationships. We try and broker relationships that we think will happen, but we try at the beginning, up front, to make sure that they can meet one another in a very open and honest way. And I think it's about managing expectations of the academics involved in the process, and kind of shielding the projects as much as we can from all the bureaucracy that surrounds it as well, so that they can just get on with what they want to do creatively. I think that's really important, and that comes back to what you were mentioning before about understanding values too.
I'll just briefly add that I think if there is a clarity of direction on both in the partnership from the outset, then you've got a good chance of success, and you know that's something that's worked well for us.
I'd just add, it is about personalities. It comes down to personalities in most things in business. But with our particular way of collaborating, it's absolutely about respect and the fact that you have to be honest with the other side. You have to respect what it is they need to get out of it. You can't be mercenary and just focus on your needs. That just will never work.
Thank you. Have we got time for one more question, Helga?
Yeah, I'm sorry to ask this question, but money, you know, as a technology provider or a service provider, I have to make money. I want to collaborate with cultural organisations of one sort or another and share my ideas with them. But I actually want to do that because, yeah, it would be fun, it would be interesting, it would make a contribution, but actually it's because I want to make money out of that. How do you, what tips does the panel have for handling that issue, i.e., you know, the filthy moolah, and does it spoil relationships or does it power them? Can it power them?
I think, I mean, something we all share is if you're developing a piece of technology, you've got to understand what it is the problem you're trying to solve, and solve it really well. Only when you do that will the technology be adopted. So you need to find a project, an idea, a shared idea that when you explore, you both agree, actually, we really understand the context, we understand the people, we understand what the solution is to this problem, and then you can focus on the technology. Once you've understood the solution and you build that really well, you get high adoption rate of the technology, and with that, you'll probably get more success with the money side of things. I think something that we've both agreed on is that the Dev Lab gave us almost a low-cost introduction to each other, cost of a train journey and a day out from our day job. But actually from that, and a little bit of more investment, we feel that we're actually on a journey towards possibly getting some R&D funding, possibly developing a piece of technology that we could develop a licensing for, and who knows where that will go. But yes, money is important, it pays the mortgage, but having a really good idea and having a good partner with that really makes sure that you're on the right journey towards paying the mortgage and getting food on the table.
Thank you.
I think there's business development support out there, and that's what we do really well in React. Actually, we like I said explicitly, it's a culture change to use Arts and Humanities Research Council money to do this as well, and pay explicitly a creative company 10k to buy out their time on the project to do R&D. And I think that the business development side of things, you know, the IP that the 6 projects that we've just finished came in with the ideas at the beginning. None of the IP coming out at the end is what they originally came in with. So to have those business development workshops along the way were really vital, actually. So I think that's one of the important things.
There are various different ways of doing this. Our particular project has a very particular slant because of the way we're funded. And I'm glad you asked the question, because it lets me kind of pitch what it is we're doing very specifically. So if you were an SME, why would you want to do a collaborative project with a public organisation? Well, we're not a fund-giving body, so we're not just paying people for work at all. And it's also not about getting free work from SMEs for museums. It's absolutely not about that either. What it is about, crucially, about building the collaborations, because both parties get something out of it. But they all three parties get something different out of it. So the SMEs, and it's difficult for us to explain because every SME is different, so what they get out of it might be different. But the SMEs might work with us or our partners because they themselves have a need which taking part in the project will fulfill. We as a unit, as the hub, can offer technical skills, technical work, actual production work in small quantities. We offer advice, but crucially we have facilities. I mean, we've just built, and last night was the launch, the soft launch, the preview of our new prototyping hall, which is the lion's share of our project, which allows you to take groups of people, up to 40 people, and track their use in a space that has been made up with digital technologies and different displays. It's a place where you can trial your products, you can trial your equipment. So, for instance, one of the companies we've worked with had some work done, and they wanted to know, did it work on a touch table? It worked on an iPad, did it work on a touch table? We helped them do that. I can see a colleague in the room somewhere, Mike Gogan, hello Mike, and we did some work with them to help them with the project that they were doing that helped them actually increase the balance of payment because their client was an overseas client at the time. So every SME could get a different thing out of it. But it's not just, do you have needs? Because if it is, then we're just a support organisation. It's much more about the opportunities, and as my colleagues here have suggested, collaborating with these partners opens the doors to so many more things and allows you to, flight test ideas you want to do, gives you access to markets you may not have otherwise have encountered before, and crucially it lets you build that understanding of working in those areas which you won't get unless you work on either a fee-paid project which then carries big risks, or a collaborative exercise for which the risks are actually lower to you if you can invest some time, but you do have to invest some time.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you very much. I can feel two speed networkers at my shoulder, so I shall wrap up quite quickly. But before I do, can I just ask that you give a round of applause to our panel, please? I think it's been really interesting. Nice one.
Thank you. That's one of my jobs done. So thank you very much to our panel. Before you all get up and run around. Yeah, sorry, that's... For any of you under the age of, 35, there used to be a show for children called Run Around with a comedian called Mike Reed, thank you. And then he used to get you to run around now. But we're not going to get you to do that right now because we want you to hear from Mitra. So, we don't have a tea or coffee break officially now, but as I said, not yet. It's not run around time yet. We will be getting you to move about. Thanks again to our panel. If you can wait till the runaround signal to leave, that's all right. But I'm sure we've got lots of questions for you. So we have some specially invited speed networkers. Is that right, Mitra? And we have our technologists from this morning. All you have to know is, actually, it's a digital crowd. Do you know which way clockwise is? I know it's an analog term. It might be a little bit, but we'll be getting you to move clockwise around the room. Over to Mitra, she'll tell you everything that you need to know.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so it's pretty simple really. Our technologists, digital innovators, to find a space around the room and stay there, and we'll come and put a label above your head and we'll arrange some tables around you. And I've got I just wanted to go through the list of the extra innovators that we have, just to kind of give them an intro, really. They've come all the way. So we have Artolo, Be Creative, Beefjack, Droplet, Into Search Interfaces Development Limited, Kosu, Linknode, we've got Scrambu, Virtual Experience Company, and WT Infotech joining us. the rest of the innovators that were here this morning as well. Some of you will be doing it, some of you might not be. So there's going to be plenty of people around. And then to everybody else here, the idea is that there'll be some chairs around each one of the innovators, and you sit down and they will do a pitch to you. There's 5 minutes. They can use that 5 minutes however way they like. They might want to pitch to you for 5 minutes, but I would sincerely hope that they would like to have a conversation with you, and you will have some questions to ask them as well. But when the bell goes, you have to, even if you're mid-sentence, you will have to stand up and move to the next innovator. Okay, that's really important, otherwise the whole thing doesn't work. We want to get you around as many people as possible. If you've got cards, business cards with you, then brilliant. Obviously, leave those with the innovators or take some of theirs. I've also got some of these sheets printed out. I've only got 50 of them, but I'll put them over here, so if you want to come and pick them up. There's a 140-character kind of description of each company on here as well. So, yeah, so I suppose now just if you could...
So, innovators, could you... It now sound like gladiator, now sound like the gladiator. Innovators, are you ready? Now, if you'd like to position yourself around the room, spread out. People who aren't innovators, play nicely and have a chat just for a moment. So if you'd like to spread yourself out. And don't forget, when the bell goes, you are moving clockwise around the room, no kidding. Yeah, of course you can. Okay, we're going to start putting up signs. Spread yourself out. You can go the other side of here as well. You can move down into, if there's some space on that bit, other side of the screens, there's the stage.
Do you need a hand doing this?
Yes, please.
What am I doing?
Just find who they are and give them a sign, I suppose.
I don't know who he is. I know who she is.
Are you?
I know who he is.
Yeah, he's easy to find.
Are there any more of these?
Yeah.